Berta Borodkina, or Iron Bella, was the mistress of glasses and ladles in the resort of Gelendzhik. All the highest ranks of the USSR came to her restaurants for delicious food, alcohol and entertainment. Unfortunately, it was friendship with those in power that ruined the spectacular young woman. The history of the USSR knows only 3 cases when women were sentenced to capital punishment, the death penalty. The first was Antonina Makarova, nicknamed Tanka the Machine Gunner during the Great Patriotic War. She collaborated with the Germans and shot about 1,500 partisans. The second was Tamara Ivanutina. She was found guilty of intentionally poisoning 40 people, 13 of which were fatal. The third, Berta Borodkina, was not a murderer or a recidivist. On the contrary, she had connections in the government of the USSR and was considered the Queen of Gelendzhik. In this material, we will tell you what led to the fact that she was shot in 1983. Berta Naumovna Borodkina, née Koral, was born in 1927 in the Ukrainian White Church. It was rumored that during the Great Patriotic War, she, still a teenager, became the mistress of a Romanian partisan and worked for the Germans, but no one found confirmation of this. In 1951, Berta moved from Odessa to Gelendzhik and very soon married the retired General Borodkin. Family happiness was short-lived. The newly made husband died and left a good estate as an inheritance to his wife. Berta Bella, who already worked as a waitress in a local restaurant, she never received an education, even a secondary one because of the war, did not mourn her husband for long. A woman with a complex character stormed one career height after another and in 1974 became the head of the Trust of Restaurants and Canteens in Gelendzhik. All important officials went to dine with Bertha, and she knew how to serve important guests in the highest rank. A legitimate question: how could there be service at the level in the Soviet Gelendzhik? Because there was a shortage throughout the country. The answer is simple: Berta mercilessly hung on other customers, ordinary visitors to her establishments. She called them rats. She knew how to make sure that the client did not notice underfilling and underweight, offered visitors cutlets in which there was almost no meat, diluted cognac with tea and cheap vodka, and sour cream and milk with water. Sometimes Borodkina, however, sneezed at her subordinates and told them that people also need to be taken care of. Like, sour cream should be diluted only with boiled water, so that there are no infections. All the money saved on such a deceit Berta demanded to be given to her. She kept part of it for herself, and for the rest she arranged receptions for the highest ranks, the rumor about which passed from mouth to mouth. The subordinates nicknamed Bertha Iron Bella, because for disobedience she threatened to transfer them to work in the party canteen, where it was simply impossible to underweight, and therefore earn money. Borodkina did not skimp on treats for her superiors, and also spoiled them with other entertainments. For example, she arranged boat races for them, a pleasant evening in a bathhouse with girls of not the most difficult behavior, and simply gave bribes. Berta was sure that this made her completely invulnerable to justice. Moreover, her establishments never came within scheduled inspections. However, she was wrong. Borodkina burned out not at all on fraud, but on pornography. In 1982, an anonymous fighter for morality told the prosecutor's office that movie nights were taking place in one of Borodkina's cafes. Naturally, not for everyone and for a lot of money. Employees of the porn parlor were caught red-handed, and they said that adult films are included with the personal permission of Iron Bella, and she receives a good income from this. Then Bertha's house was raided with a search. Borodkina, piously confident in her immunity, only laughed in the faces of the operatives and slammed the door in their faces. The investigators nevertheless entered the house of the main breadwinner of the party elite. They had to break open the door for this, and conducted a search. What the operatives saw made even the seasoned whistle in surprise. Money was everywhere, in bricks in the yard, in 3-liter glass jars, in heater grates and under carpets. As a nice bonus, jewelry, scarce bed linen, crystal and furs. The total amount of savings is 130,000 rubles, and this is with an average salary 1,000 times less. Closing parenthesis dot. And even then, with a smile on her lips, Berta told the policeman, "You will be in trouble." And when during the investigation it was established that Berta had stolen more than 1,000,000 rubles from the state, she was no longer in the mood for jokes. Repeatedly received bribes from a large group of subordinates at work. From the bribes received, Borodkina herself transferred bribes to responsible employees for assistance in work and other services that create an environment for committing crimes in the trust. So, over the past 2 years, 15,000 rubles worth of valuables, money and food was handed over to the secretary of the city party committee, Pagodin, says an excerpt from the criminal case of Borodkina. The aforementioned Nikolai Pagodin did not refute the accusations. Shortly after Bertha was taken into custody, he simply vanished. No witnesses, no traces, no marks of travel abroad, no corpse, the man was gone. At that time, the so-called Medinov case was raging in the USSR, one of the first high-profile corruption investigations that thundered throughout the entire Union, initiated personally by the head of the KGB, Yuri Andropov. It was preceded by the corruption Rybnoy Delo, in which investigators contacted the director of the Okean store in Sochi, Arsen Pruidze. He, frightened of severe punishment, began to cooperate with the investigation and betrayed that he shared income with the head of Sochi, Vyacheslav Vorenkov. And he was close to the first secretary of the Krasnodar Regional Committee of the CPSU, Sergei Medinov. In general, it was Medinov and Pagodin who made Berta a dizzying career. They constantly looked into the dining room where she worked as a director, were impressed by the level of service and promoted Borodkin up the career ladder. Sergei Fedorovich appointed Zeleznaya Bella the head of the Trust of Restaurants and Canteens of Gelendzhik for a reason. He needed a person who would feed, drink and sleep with beautiful women for the entire party nomenclature. Then the affairs of state will go faster and more efficiently. And he preferred not to be interested in Bertha's methods of work. In the end, Sergei Medinov himself was not brought to justice, although he was removed from his post. But in his case, more than 5,000 officials were dismissed and expelled from the CPSU, and 1,500 of them received real terms. When Borodkina was taken to the pre-trial detention center, she was sure that she would be released that very second. However, influential friends were in no hurry to save the Queen of Gelendzhik from the clutches of justice. The woman began to complain about torture. She said that she was beaten every evening, and also forced to take psychotropic drugs, under the influence of which she began to testify. Her criminal case contains 20 volumes, and following the results of a frank confession, 30 more cases were opened. More than 70 officials were involved in them. Iron Bella realized that there was nowhere to wait for help. Then she tried to imitate schizophrenia and was even convincing enough, but she still could not deceive the medical examination. Borodkina did not immediately, but realized that she would not be able to get out of the water dry. However, she could not imagine what the punishment would be. Iron Bella was sentenced to the death penalty. Berta herself was shocked, as were everyone who followed this scandalous case. Nobody expected such a turn of events. Iron Bella, as a woman, was 15 years old, maximum 20, with confiscation of property. For you to understand, in the USSR, especially dangerous criminals were sentenced to death: spies, saboteurs, bandits and murderers who committed a crime intentionally and with aggravating circumstances. Note that in Sochi there was a similar situation. Restaurants in the resort town were run by Valentina Merzlaya. And she used the same methods as her Gelendzhik colleague. True, there was one significant difference. She had an influential husband, Alexander Merzly, secretary of the Sochi City Party Committee. A couple on the same charges received only 15 years. He was released under an amnesty 7 years later, and she served the entire term. The Queen of Gelendzhik was simply destroyed. She returned to her cell and began to wait for the execution of the sentence, and howled terribly at night. Her only daughter tried to save the suicide bomber. She wrote petitions to all possible authorities, but there was no result. The death sentence was carried out in August 1983. Borodkina was 56 years old. After that, the daughter of Iron Bella was denied the latest petition. The girl was not even allowed to take her mother's body. Berta Borodkin was buried in an unmarked grave. This is how Bertha Bella became the main victim and scapegoat in the behind-the-scenes political wars. According to the Kuban historian Vladimir Renov, Iron Bella was let down by what she was always so proud of, connections in the government. The higher ranks did not want to help Bertha escape punishment. They preferred that Borodkina could never speak again, because she really knew too much.